Actually, that's something to be very, very aware of. Yes, this can look all very cool and funky, but underneath all this, there's a whole lot of BMW going on.
From a mechanical perspective, what is it with premium brands and crappy engine bay plastics? It's just not acceptable. And in the Mini's case, it's really just going to ruin this car.
With awesome steering and a chassis that I swear, it's just set up to put a smile on your face. This is just so much fun in the real world. Okay, you want this generation of Mini Cooper S to be a great used car buy. And look, honestly, so do we. But with the earliest examples of this generation now pushing 10 years old, how are they aging? What goes wrong with them? Well, spoiler alert, lots. How about we start with the exterior? Now, first up, and this is more prevalent on the 2-door convertibles and the 3-door hatches like this compared to the 5-door hatch models, but make sure you check the base of the B-pillar because plenty of owners have reported exactly this. The door rubbers tend to rub the paint off and it gets back to the bare metal, and this can turn into rust or corrosion. Another issue relating to seals, that in some of the models the boot seal could be faulty and let water into the boot. However, there has been a replacement seal for this and it should fix the issue. Now, it's important to know there are 3 iterations of this 3rd generation Mini, and we're going to be taking you through what each of the iterations kind of include as the video goes on. But this next issue is far more prevalent on the pre-update cars. Basically, any of the gloss black plastic, especially this slab under the number plate, they can fade and turn purple. Now, this is purely an aesthetic fault, and honestly, it actually could be sort of appealing if you're a fan of Prince or Jeff from the Wiggles. But if you want to replace especially this part, it's an absolute nightmare. You have to take the entire front bar off because if you don't, you can damage some of the other plastics and components within the front grille. And that's because plenty of owners have complained that loads of the exterior plastics are becoming really, really brittle with age. In fact, make sure you check the headlight surrounds because plenty of owners have complained that the clips just break and eventually these rings just fly off. Even the double-sided tape that is fitted to some of the later iterations to try to stop this happening, it's starting to lose its adhesion so they can still fly off. And then next up, when you talk to the owners of these things or even some of the technicians that work on them, apparently a replacement windscreen can cost in excess of $2,000. But then the other problem is that apparently you have to replace these plastic A-pillar surrounds and even the scuttle panel. And because Mini is owned by BMW, plenty of these parts, they're not going to be cheap. Actually, that's something to be very, very aware of. Yes, this can look all very cool and funky, but underneath all this, there's a whole lot of BMW going on. And because of that, some of the replacement parts can be astronomical when it comes to price. Also, while we're talking about glass and expense, the mirrors can have an issue. Basically, the glass section can get cloudy around the outside, but the only real way of fixing this is to replace the glass, and it is stupidly expensive for what it is. But the good news here, there are plenty of aftermarket options out there that do the same job for sometimes a quarter of the price. And then another issue relating to glass, if the car you're looking at has got a sunroof fitted, be very, very careful because it's not unheard of for the cable mechanism for the sunroof to snap. Now, the issue with this is that some owners have claimed their dealerships have quoted over $2,500 to fix this. Some even stated that the dealership have quoted over $1,000 just to close the sunroof and disable it. Now, the hot tip here is just avoid the dealerships. Either go and check out your independent mechanic or check out the forum Mini F56 because on there are loads of tutorials and great advice on how to fix this yourself. It can be a bit of a DIY project as long as you're relatively skilled with tools. Now, if a simple sunroof can go horribly wrong, the complexity of an entire mechanically operated folding roof certainly shouldn't fill you with confidence. And yeah, neither should it. Now, there are so many reported issues with the convertibles here. Sometimes the roof won't close, sometimes it'll sort of half close and then stop and then just refuse to move. If it gets even the slightest bit out of alignment, that can result in a whole bunch of water leakage issues, which then result in electronic gremlins. It's a complete nightmare. In fact, we normally leave our suggestion of if we think you should buy the car or not till the end of the video. But when it comes to the convertible versions of these, don't buy one. It's just not worth the hassle. If you want a convertible, buy a real convertible like an MX-5. It's going to be so much better. Anyway, look, owners have also reported a bunch of sporadic electronic issues with the exterior as well. We're talking power folding mirror issues, lighting issues. If it has electricity running to it, just make sure it works. Also, check the condition of this scuttle panel or the cowl at the base of the windscreen because these can have all sorts of issues. If it's broken, it can let water into the car and that can result in a whole bunch of electronic gremlins. Now this next issue is really only a problem in really, really cold climates, but because the doors are frameless, which yes is cool, the problem is for the door to open and close, the window has to go up and down. Sometimes in cold climates, it doesn't, and you can't get into the car. Now there is a really simple solution to this. Just jump on the owners groups in the forums. There's plenty of great advice there. It just involves lubricant, and the entire process is really painless. Now to stop rust and corrosion in these, Mini inject this stuff called Cosmoline into the interiors of the panels. But the problem with it is that in hot climates like Australia, it can melt and it just starts dribbling out of the panels. But then it can stain exterior plastics like here, and in some cases even stain the paintwork. But the good news here is it's super easy to clean off. Just check the owners groups in the forums for advice and make sure you use quality car care products on it. Actually, really hot tip on buying the right cleaning products for these. We highly recommend checking out our mates at Automotive Superstore. Actually, this goes for everything from performance, suspension parts, aftermarket wheels, infotainment systems, even four-wheel drive accessories. Automotive Superstore have over 400,000 products to choose from. So look, chances are whatever you need, they're gonna have it. Plus to make working out what suits your car easy, all you've got to do is type in your rego into the website and it will filter down to all the parts that are specific for your car. Plus they can deliver Australia-wide, so you don't even have to get off your ass to go and get this stuff. It's awesome. Seriously, check out Automotive Superstore, just hit the link below. Now the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that in that earlier graphic, we're purely going to be talking about the Cooper S and the John Cooper Works models in this video. We'll cover the more conservative Minis down the track. Although in saying that, plenty of what we're going to be covering with these will relate to the more conservative Minis anyway. But even when it comes to the more performance-focused models, thanks to Mini being Mini, we do need to decipher the range because it can be so confusing. Just like every model of Mini, there have been a seemingly endless array of customization options. So there's a chance that no two examples on the used market will ever be exactly the same. But even when it comes to just the various trim specs and models of the Cooper S and John Cooper Works, guess how many different models there have been? Like say 8 or 9, even that seems too many, right? No, 30. 30, why? And that's just the Australian delivered models. Internationally, there are even more. And okay, yes, this does include the handful of electric versions and the quite special and unique John Cooper Works GP. But still, if you're on the market, it can be a complete nightmare if you're trying to decide on which one suits you best. Which is why we have created a completely free cheat sheet to explain all the differences between all of the different models. To get it for free, click the link below. Now, aside from the electric versions, all Cooper S and John Cooper Works models will feature a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine sending various amounts of power to the front wheels via either a manual, automatic or dual clutch transmission, depending on the year and the model. And fun fact, this engine is extremely similar to the engine that you'll find powering the BMW X1, X2, Z4 and 2 Series. And when it comes to the electric versions, well, for this video, we're just going to ignore them for now because currently they make up for less than 4% of what's available on the used market. Now, when it comes to what you should be paying for these things, at the very cheap end of the spectrum, you're going to be looking at around about 15,000 Aussie dollars. At the other end of the spectrum, something really special like a GP edition, a bit over 60 grand. But the thing is, we need to talk about depreciation because if the previous generations are anything to go by, the depreciation never seems to stop. Take a 3-door 2017 John Cooper Works. These were asking around about $50,000 when new. These days, the average used price for that car is about $30,000. So it's lost $20,000 in 7 years, which I know might not sound all that horrendous until you compare it to some of the competition. For example, let's take another overtly designed front-wheel drive performance hatch from 2017, the Honda Civic Type R. Brand new, it too is asking around about $50,000. These days, they swap hands for around about $48,000. So it's lost about $2,000 over the same period. Interestingly, another hot hatch from 2017 that's used price averages around the John Cooper Works $30,000 mark is the Hyundai i30N. Although when it was new, it was asking $10,000 less than the Mini. Plus you won't be paying BMW Mini parts prices with the Hyundai or the Honda either. But look, enough of the pesky financial realities for a moment. Let's talk about some aspects of the Mini that its more sensible competitors simply cannot match it. It's the looks and the vibe. First of all, talk about a car that absolutely nails its brand DNA and corporate identity. I mean, I don't know if there's any other car, maybe short of a Porsche 911, that is as instantly recognizable as a Mini, and I think that should be celebrated, even if some of the build quality leaves a lot to be desired. But unfortunately for me, that's not the only negative with the aesthetics of the Mini. I just feel that with each new generation, they gradually lose more and more of their charm. The first gen was so cool, and it nailed the whole modern take on a retro design thing. The second generation didn't step too far away from the first. It's just a little bit larger in every dimension, although that in itself can be controversial. But it's this third generation that for me is just getting a bit big and bloated, especially the 5-door variant of this. That thing does absolutely nothing for me. Look, I totally understand that the designers, they have to abide by a whole bunch of pedestrian safety rules, and this thing is clearly built to a budget, but I'm just starting to think that these generations, the newer ones, they're looking a bit more like a caricature of the original 1960s Minis rather than a homage, which is what it should be. But what about inside? What goes wrong in here? Well, let's just say it's better than the exterior, but it's still far from perfect. First of all, the infotainment system, it is based on BMW's iDrive, and for me, it is simply one of the best infotainment systems out there. No matter which iteration you're looking at, this thing is excellent. However, some owners are going to disagree with me on that because we found plenty of complaints about this system. It seems that because the whole interface, the native basic software, had to be changed to go from BMW to Mini, this compromises some of the usability of it. And also, like other BMWs, it can be guilty of a few just inherent issues. See, they can suffer from Bluetooth connection issues. If it's a post-2018 model, it can have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connection issues. It can do this kind of constant reboot cycle all the time, and the only way to fix it is to turn the car off and then back on again, but even sometimes that doesn't help. Also, the screen itself can develop a few little black spots or dead pixels, but the problem with this is sometimes to fix all of this properly requires all new infotainment hardware, and that's not going to be cheap. But another complaint with the interior that we came across time and time again from owners, it's that the interior plastics just become really brittle with age. See, thanks to the cheap plastics that Mini or BMW have used here, no matter how funky this interior looks, and let's be honest, it does look really funky, having the whole interior sound like a jar of uncooked macaroni rattling away all the time certainly detracts from the aesthetic delights that the interior can give you. Even in this car, some of the interior plastics just feel a bit, I don't know, cheap and nasty. Also on the whole wear and tear thing, I don't know if it's just this specific car, but this isn't a touch screen. Some of the later iterations had touch screens, but it seems that a lot of people try to use this as a touch screen, and the screen's kind of just getting a bit used. Also, just make sure every single button here actually does what it's supposed to do. Chances are it will, but we have read a few sporadic reports that things like the horn not working or the air conditioning actuators playing up, sometimes these can be really cheap and easy fix. Other times it can be a sign that there's a more insidious electronic issue forming. Also, as great as this interior design is, apparently it's not the most resilient interior. Plenty of owners have complained that the leather on the steering wheel and some of the leather seats, they can wear prematurely. Obviously, to mitigate this, it just requires meticulous, tender loving care, and then the interior should age quite nicely. But if you don't look after it like it's a newborn puppy, it can look a bit shit in no time. But look, it's important to understand as well, we know this video seems like a whole lot of doom and gloom, but for thousands of owners out there, that's simply not the case. When you read through the owners groups and forums and speak to the technicians that work on these, also massive thank you to everybody that helped us research this video, you'll find countless stories of people loving their Mini and having no dramas whatsoever. But look, aside from all the common issues, I've got to say, I love this interior. It's so nice to sit in a car that has some genuine charm and character to the way the interior looks. So many cars, especially in this class, they're very conservative and it's just a whole lot of black and grey plastic, but this just, there's a sense of occasion in here. Okay, the rectangular screen in this big round circle, maybe that doesn't land from a design approach, and also the coloured LEDs around it can look a bit cheap and nasty for me, but besides that, overall, I really enjoy this place. And not only does the design look really good, but just using some of the switchgear, like they just feel nice to use. Also, the ergonomics are absolutely spot on. I love these seats. They're super comfortable, but they're also really supportive. So on a long drive, they're really great, but if you go hammering through some corners, they're gonna hold you in place. Steering wheel position's great, loads of adjustability where everything makes sense. Ergonomics, top notch. Although, something they could do with improvement is the practicality when it comes to living with this car, because It's honestly not that great. So you've got a pretty disappointing sized glove box there. You've got a spot for your phone just here, but then it's just going to fall all over the place. 2 cup holders, but they're just the wrong size. If you drink a small pretentious coffee like me, like a Piccolo, it disappears in there, but then it's not going to fit a large bottle either. This section under the handbrake, that's great for just collecting dust and crap. The armrest here has a little storage bin inside, but it's very, very small. Door bins are very narrow. They can fit things with maybe 2 dimensions. That's about it for practicality up front. Honestly, not that great. Also, when it comes to what stuff you're going to get in here in terms of safety, features, equipment, all that, look, with 3 iterations and 30 different models, we simply don't have time to take you through what each one of them actually gets. If you need to know all that specific stuff, simply go to ReDriven.com, check out the cheat sheet, the link's down below. But just know that rather than offering loads of equipment for what you spend, Mini do tend to lean heavily into their sort of image and brand appeal rather than giving you heaps of bells and whistles. Chances are something like a Ford Fiesta ST or Focus ST or a Skoda Octavia RS or a Hyundai i30N or i20N, they're going to offer you more stuff for your cash than one of these. Also, Mini, like so many other manufacturers, are probably going to try to charge you exorbitant fees for simple replacement things like windscreen wiper blades. Luckily, Wipertech can fix that issue. Now, we've been working with Wipertech for a couple of years now, and it's because they make simply some of the best wiper blades money can buy. Plus, they're easy to order online. They're going to be delivered directly to your door. They're a breeze to fit. And if you get yourself a set via the link down below, you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping. It doesn't get any better than that. Also, as a massive thank you to Revive Auto Group and Yesadara for lending us her car, she's going to be going home with a set of these bad boys for free. And if you want a set for free, simply lend us your car. Let us know in the comments below, or better yet, message us on the socials. If we feature it, you're getting a set for free. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 3 centimeters taller than American actor and filmmaker Bradley Cooper S. This is in my driving position, and honestly, pretty disappointing. Like, the seats are comfortable enough. There's not a lot of lateral support, but it's only a small car. But there is no legroom, there's no footroom, my feet are cramped in there. I actually own a Fiesta ST as my daily driver, and it has substantially more space in the back seat than this thing. Yeah, not great. But as far as practicality and features go, you've got cup holder in the middle. There are cup holders in the sides, but the problem is if you have legs, because your legs are so squished against the inside side of the car, you can't actually get to the cup holder at all. And there are map pockets that you can kind of get to, but I just want to get out of here. This is not a fun place to be. Now look, obviously the 5-door version of this has more space in the back. It's exactly 72 millimeters, but even then, it's not exactly what you'd call palatial in the back seat. Now, as far as space in the boot goes, honestly, not great. You can put stuff under there as well, and also the seats don't bloody fold completely flat, so that's annoying. The 5-door does have 30% more boot space than the 3-door, but even then, certainly not class leading. In fact, with the 5-door, with only 278 litres of space on tap, it's only slightly larger than the boot of a Suzuki Swift Sport. Something like a Golf GTI, that's got over 100 litres more boot space. Plus the 5-door, like the 3-door, the rear seats don't fold flat, so an IKEA run can just end up being a complete nightmare. Now, when it comes to complaints and issues when it comes to the driving experience, the first big one we found time and time again was that owners complain about how bad the run flat tyres are that come on these as standard. Not only can they completely ruin the ride quality, but apparently if you hit, well, really anything like a pothole, the tyre can bulge and eventually this can damage the rim. Owners recommend that one of the first things you should do is just bin the run flats and fit some really high quality performance rubber, because this can completely transform the car. Also, the passive suspension setup in these, it cops a few complaints as well. It is on the harsh side of firm, and apparently with age it just gets worse. The active suspension, or the VDS setup that is available in some of these, that can fix the ride quality concerns, but then on the flip side of that, owners have had issues with some premature wear with those struts. So look, the hot tip here is just fit really high quality aftermarket suspension. And again, if you want advice on any of that stuff, owners groups, forums, that's where you need to go. Also on the suspension, listen out for any knocking, especially from the front end, because the front control control arm bushings can wear prematurely. Although this might just be another excuse to fit quality aftermarket suspension. But aside from the common complaints, something I've just always loved about these Cooper S models, and especially the JCW, is just how fun they are to drive all the time. Honestly, this is very nearly the perfect style of car for a city like Sydney. See, I just don't see the point in having a huge amount of power anymore, because it seems like the police are just hell-bent to take your license away at the earliest convenience. But having this amount of power, like this torquey little engine with awesome steering and a chassis that I swear it's just set up to put a smile on your face, this is just so much fun in the real world. Also, it does the boring everyday stuff really well too, like dealing with traffic or trying to find a park. The car, it sort of wraps around you, so it's like the perimeter of the car is really easy to judge. So tight driveways are just a breeze. Hang on, another roundabout coming up. There we go, that was 40 kilometers an hour, and it's hilarious. Although, it is a shame that on a rough road, the constant rattles, they do take away from the fun driving experience. Plus, the brakes on this particular one, they feel like you're pushing a sponge, and also the auto transmission in this, it's pretty jerky and clunky. It's like it gets lost between gears. Also, these particular tires, they suck. You don't ever really know how much grip you've got. Also, Minis of previous generations have a pretty shocking reputation when it comes to mechanical reliability. Is that the same story with this generation? Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
One common problem we see in these is the PCV valve. All cars have them. In some cases, you can just change the PCV valve. Other times you can just change the diaphragm. It's usually only a few bucks. Nope, not in these. If you have a PCV valve issue, you have to change the entire valve cover. But it doesn't end there. To get the valve cover off, you have to take off the high pressure fuel pump. You have to take out all of the high pressure direct fuel injectors. And you need a special tool to shape the Teflon injector seals. It's a huge ordeal. And then you actually have to buy a whole valve cover. The whole thing is plastic. It's made of cheese, and usually we see them fail at around 100,000 Ks. The oil filter housing on these, yeah, again, it's made of plastic. It's got a whole bunch of passages where oil and coolant flow quite close to each other. Sometimes the coolant leaks out externally onto the ground. That's your best case scenario. Other times the oil can also leak externally. That's good too. Other times the oil and coolant can mix and you get cross-contamination with engine oil and coolant. Now, if you get a bit of oil in your coolant, that's a big mess and that's a pain. You can clean it up. But if you get coolant in your oil, that just dilutes the oil, and then that can, if it's not detected and repaired, that can go on to cause engine bearing problems and ultimately catastrophic engine failure. I've seen these oil filter housings fail at 80,000 Ks, so they are definitely not designed to last. These have another plastic part. It's basically just an elaborate version of a thermostat. They call it the heat management module. It's actually a pretty clever unit, but it is unnecessarily complicated. Unlike the old days where you just had a simple thermostat that was sort of just the heat opened it and closed it, these things are all electronic. There's a bunch of rotary valves that are servo actuated. The valves leak, the valves get stuck, these servo actuators fail. When coolant gets in them, they fail. It's just a nightmare. And yes, it's all made of plastic. So if you own one of these, be prepared to just change that on a regular basis. I've seen them fail at about 100,000 Ks. So yeah, that's a thing you're going to have to do. And the same goes for the rest of the cooling system. The majority of it is plastic. All the bypass hoses, the expansion tank, it's all plastic. And history has shown us that after heat cycles after a few years, they just do not last, and they're just splitting and leaking all over the place. And a pro tip here, if you have one of these, just be prepared to replace any or all of the cooling system parts from 100,000 Ks onwards. Now, the last thing I want to say about all of these plastic parts is, well, I can't categorically say they are not engineered to fail. I can certainly say they are not designed to last. So as far as non-plastic parts go, the internals of this engine are actually reasonably good. We have seen a few complications with the Vanos control or the sprockets in these things. They do break internally sometimes and just stop functioning. You'll just get camshaft angular offset, or that's basically correlation fault code when that happens. And you might hear a rattle too on startup. Now, I have heard of cases where they've heard the rattle on startup and just naturally assumed it's the timing chain and rushed in and replaced the timing chain. It's turned out to be the Vanos sprocket. So just make sure you're on the right path before you go pulling the thing apart. I should mention too, the timing chains so far are relatively reliable, but when something does go wrong, like a lot of Euro stuff now, that timing chain is at the back of the engine, and you either have to take the gearbox out or the engine out to change it, and it is very labour intensive and it's bloody expensive too. But as I said, so far the timing chains are seemingly reliable. Now I know that seems like a lot of doom and gloom, and there are plenty of owners out there that are very happy with these things. But all of these plastic cooling system parts, in a climate like Australia, I really think you are actually asking for trouble.
So after all of that, you're probably thinking that there is no way that we would recommend you buy a Cooper S or a JCW, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case. Sure, there are a host of other cars that make far more sense and potentially offer better bang for your buck, but none of them provide the charm and image that the Mini serves up in spades. It's really important to understand exactly what you want from a car. If you're on a budget and you want the best possible build quality and reliability while still having something that makes you laugh every time you drive it, well, these are not the cars for you. But if your priorities and requirements of a car revolve around image and brand appeal, which honestly is totally valid, and you have deep pockets and you want a car that will make you laugh every single time you drive it, well, we very, very cautiously sort of recommend a Cooper S or a JCW. Just please try to find an absolutely meticulously maintained example that has been serviced ahead of schedule, and hopefully you'll be okay. Or if you're happy to sacrifice some of the image and brand appeal for potentially what could be one of the most underrated hot hatches on the used market, check out one of these. But if you weren't to buy this or this, what would you buy instead? Also, why would you or wouldn't you buy a Cooper S or a JCW? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Enough of the pesky knee. Here we go. Let's talk about, Jesus Christ, mate. Pesky financial reality.